Okay, so the Trinity is a teaching that's found in the Hebrew Old Testament. It's not a doctrine that's made up by the church fathers or anything post-apostolic. It's something that we find multiple references to in the New Testament text, whether it's the Gospels or the epistles. We find dozens of references to the teaching in the Old Testament, both the Torah, the prophets, and the wisdom literature, that in the Old Testament, God appeared, for example, in Genesis and was seen walking with Adam and Eve. He had a theophanic manifestation, as we call in the Orthodox Church. In Genesis 12, the Lord appears to Abraham. In Genesis 15, the Lord, again, as the word or the logos, the voice, appears to Abraham. In John 5, Jesus says to the Pharisees, no one has seen the Father at any time. And yet we already have in the first few chapters of Genesis, Yahweh appearing, Yahweh walking around with a form. That form is identified by Jesus in the Gospel of John in chapters 5 through 9 as himself, the one that dined with Abraham, the one that Abraham looked forward to as his salvation, as his Messiah, the one that went up on the mountain, that Moses went up on the mountain to eat with in the latter chapters of Exodus. This Yahweh, angel of the Lord, is also seen in Genesis 16, where when Hagar sees the angel of the Lord, she says, I have seen Yahweh face to face. In Genesis 18, God again appears in a manifestation. In Genesis 22:14-15, the Lord appears and is called the messenger of Yahweh. In Genesis 24:7, the angel goes before them, and that angel messenger is referenced in Exodus 23 as the same angel messenger that goes before the Israelites to battle against the Canaanites and the Perizzites and the Hivites and others, and is called the one who redeems and forgives sins. If you compare Exodus 23 with Exodus 3 and with Genesis 49, when it talks about Joseph says that the angel redeemed him out of all of his difficulties. In Genesis 26:2, Yahweh again appears to Abraham. 26:23 appears. The well of vision is where the Son of God appears again. And then we know that that's the Son of God because in Genesis 28, there's a ladder that Jacob sees. And that ladder is referenced in John 1:51, where Jesus says that the angels descend and ascend on the Son of Man, which is a reference to Jacob's ladder at the well of vision when Jacob again sees God or sees Yahweh. In Genesis 31:11-13, the angel is again referred to as God, as divine. In Genesis 32:30, the form of God is seen. God is seen face to face in the wrestling. In Genesis 35:1, God appears. So notice, remember, in John 5, Jesus says, no one sees the Father at any time. And yet, over and over and over, within the first 35 chapters, 32 chapters of Genesis, we've already seen Yahweh, God, Lord, appearing, manifesting, a theophany, doing things in time and space. God appears in Genesis 35:1 again. Genesis 46:2, the angel is identified from chapter 22 as God. Remember that the word angel has multiple significances and meanings. It doesn't just mean a created being like Gabriel. It can also just mean a messenger. It can be human, it can be an angel, or it can be divine. And of course, Jesus says that angel son, that angel messenger of the covenant, who again, he identifies himself as throughout all these Old Testament passages in the New Testament. Specifically, John 5-9, Jesus says he was the one manifesting in all these instances. In Genesis 41:38, the Holy Spirit is said to be in him and is God, that is in Joseph. The Spirit in Genesis 1:1-2 hovers over the waters. And if you look at the work of the Holy Spirit throughout Genesis, you'll notice that he's ascribed personhood. He's ascribed action. He couldn't do that if he was a force or if he wasn't equal in divinity and in power to the Father and to the Son or the angel messenger in the Old Testament. In Exodus 3, we read, for example, that I am is identified as the same angel that goes before them in Exodus 14:19 and in Exodus 23. That means Yahweh speaking in the burning bush is the Son speaking in the burning bush. And the Son is the angel messenger who in time and space goes before them to defeat their enemies. And God says in Exodus 23 that this messenger has the name of Yahweh in him. You can't equate created beings with God or with Yahweh. In the previous debate with this person, he admitted that the Father and the Son have the same nature, and the Father's nature is uncreated. Apply that logic to all the things that I'm saying here about the Old Testament. In Exodus 31:3, we read that the Holy Spirit, the Spirit of wisdom, is who came and enlightened the Israelites to do the works that they do in that chapter. In Exodus 33, we read that the angel fights, and this angel is the one that is face to face where they meet God. And it says that this is where Moses sees God's goodnesses face to face. So the angel messenger, lo and behold, we find out, is the Son of God. In Leviticus 9, the glory of God appears to all of Israel. This again is the angel messenger who comes down and becomes present in these theophanies. These theophanies are again the kill shot proof that Jesus is the God of the Old Testament. Jesus is the second person of the Godhead, even in the Old Testament. And the Holy Spirit is also present throughout these passages as well. We read, for example, that when God appeared at Bethel, the name Bethel is given because it means the house of God or God's body. And this ties into the way that Leviticus 14 structures its argumentation about the house and the house of God. In Numbers 9, the glory cloud of God is present and appears, and that glory cloud is the same Holy Spirit cloud that overshadows Mary at the beginning of Luke. So notice the parallels between creation and the Shekinah glory that appears in Genesis 1, the glory cloud that comes into the temple, and then the glory cloud that overshadows Mary, which is, again, all Trinitarian references. The Holy Spirit, for example, in Numbers 11, is placed upon all of the elders, and it's that same cloud that appears as the fire and as a cloud in the wilderness. In Numbers 12, the Lord descends in this pillar of cloud and fire, and he stands there, and they see him face to face. The Father has no form. The Father has no body. This is the Son called Yahweh appearing. Same thing in Numbers 14:21. In Numbers 16:19, the glory again appears to all the congregation. This is the face of God. Ezekiel 1-10 identify this glory as one like the Son of Man who rides the chariot in Ezekiel 1-10. That is, of course, the Son of God, because Revelation 1 and 2 identify the same figure through deified language and through deification as the same figure of Ezekiel 1-10. Revelation 1-2 identifies that white bearded figure, that deified glowing figure, as Jesus. Revelation 1 and 2 compared to Ezekiel 1-10. Numbers 23 says that the Holy Spirit comes upon Balaam, and in Numbers 24:2 he prophesies by the Holy Spirit, and then he sees the angel of the Lord when the angel of the Lord opens his eyes to see who the angel of the Lord
Got
is.
4 minutes left, Jay.
How many?
4.
How many? In Numbers 27, the Holy Spirit is called the glory. So again, the equating of the divine power and the divine energies, not just to the angel messenger, but also to the power and work of the Holy Spirit. We see the same thing in Deuteronomy 4:12 and Deuteronomy 35:6. In Deuteronomy 5:24, they say that they saw his glory. In Deuteronomy 34, Joshua has the Holy Spirit of understanding. So just working my way up through Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, in the theophanies alone, we can already see a harmony and a consistency with the New Testament passages that demonstrate beyond any shadow of a doubt that Jesus is not just a human in the sense of having a human nature, but that his divine personhood is from all eternity. When I debated him last time, we got into the passage in John 1 about monogenes or monogenes theos. This is the term in the Greek that is the only begotten God. That means that the Son is eternally generated, eternally begotten from the Father. It's not God didn't become a father when he had a son in time as if he lacked fatherhood as an eternal attribute. He's an eternal father. And so monogenes theos means that he's eternally begotten of the Father. Likewise, in Luke 1, we read, for example, that Elizabeth says when she meets Mary, "Who am I that the mother of the Lord, the mother of God, the mother of the Theotokos, the God bearer, who am I that the mother of God should come to me?" And then we see that when Jesus is born, the glory of the Lord appears and shines around those who are witnessing the birth of the Messiah. We read, for example, that the Holy Spirit came upon Mary and was active throughout the Gospel of Luke in a way that shows that he is, again, personal and has agency and has the same powers as the Father and the Son.
2 minutes.
We read, for example, that when Jesus is baptized, all three persons of the triad are manifested. The Father speaks and says, "This is my beloved Son," and Jesus is baptized, and the Holy Spirit appears as a dove or like a dove. And so all three persons of the triad are again present just at his baptism. And lastly, I will point out that early within, and this is just in the Gospel of Luke, we can go elsewhere. It is said that when Jesus comes, the fulfillment of the prophecies are that John the Baptist would prepare the way for Yahweh. Jesus is the Yahweh that comes, that John the Baptist prepared the way for. We read the same thing in the minor prophets. You can read about Jesus being the messenger of the covenant that was prepared for by the coming of the Messiah. So John the Baptist is said to be, for example, like Elijah, in that he prepared the way. And Jesus says for Yahweh, Jesus says in Luke 4 that the Holy Spirit, this is citing the Old Testament. So he's citing the interpretation of the Old Testament that I've been giving you. He says that when Isaiah says, the Spirit of God is upon me because he has anointed me, this is the year of Yahweh. Jesus is affirming in his own words the deity of Christ, because he's saying that Isaiah was talking about him, and you have all three persons of the Trinity present just in that example in Luke 4 when Jesus reads. And then when he's tempted a few verses earlier in Luke 4:12, he says to Satan, don't tempt your God, when Satan tempted Jesus. Well, that means Jesus is God. So we see just in the Torah and just in the first 6 chapters of Luke, the way it reads and interprets the Torah, as well as John 5-9, that the Old Testament teaches the Trinity. And so that's the strongest immediate refutation for his Unitarian cult nonsense.